Very warm welcome, Ranjit sir, to Designers Unleashed. Just brief
Thank you so
introduction
much.
about Designers Unleashed. So, Designers Unleashed is an art podcast started with a vision of bridging the gap between awareness of design education among students and parents, and also to break certain myths about design education and career in the industry with students and parents, and to create more awareness about design industry. So, today we have Ranjit sir here. Can you imagine an artist who can seamlessly switch between brushstrokes of a painting and delicate touch of printmaking? So, the capturing an eye of a photographer, that's Jai Ranjit sir, and by his friends they call him Zaiu. So, a self-taught creative force, Zaiu has spent 17 years mastering a staggering 8 design disciplines, but his talent aren't confined to the canvas. So currently, Zaius sir wears the hat of being an associate director at ISDI School of Design and Innovation, where he cultivates the next generation of design thinkers. This artist, educator, and strategist brings a unique perspective to the world of design management. So let's join Zaius sir, and he'll unlock a lot of secrets about strategic design management. That's a powerful tool that empowers businesses not just to survive, but thrive in today's dynamic landscape of design and dynamic landscape of evolving, changing AI-driven industry. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, sir, can you tell us what was the creative force that led you towards art and design as a career?
So it starts off when I was a kid, essentially, where I used to love playing with things and objects, but never really had a direction per se. There was always a story involved. So for me, it was something as fun as playing with my granddad's tobacco tin and just imagining what it could be and all the things. And then when my father brought Lego into my life, that's when everything really changed because I would build the Lego according to the instructions and then take it apart and then combine it with all the other pieces and try to say, what can I create? What's something new? What can be built? What's possible? But it was also a way for me to study things that we see in the real world and then try to understand how it works, how it's put together, what's the logic behind it, so to speak, and how it functions. So from there, I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. And so I started taking maths and science and studying all of those things. But then the journey took a sudden turn when I was introduced to art and I realized, okay, the flying Air Force situation is not going to work, but I kind of found my calling. And as I was doing the research into art, it further solidified that kind of positioning. Now, we all know in India that art does not pay very well. It's not the easiest way to make a living. So it's a very big choice one has to make. So I also realized I had to tap into other skills that I had to be able to generate income, to be able to make sure that I could survive as a creator, as an artist. Teaching was one of those things. Photography was another. And so I kind of brought all of that together. And like you said, across 17 years, I've worked within 8 different spaces of design and fine art. My first job being with the Kalagoda Festival, where I was the programmer and scheduler. And that was a real eye-opening experience, a very hands-on kind of learning experience where my boss at the time and then mentor, Brinda Miller, really took me under her wing and taught me so much more than I thought I could ever learn from one person. But it also shaped how I see the world and how I do things professionally. So that's where it kind of started, and it brought me into design along the way. It brought me into teaching. It brought me into food photography, fashion photography. Went into event design, social media, content creation. So quite a range of things, really.
Yeah, that's great. So, sir, when you started with art, did you take any formal education, or did you learn from a mentor, or you got inspired by certain things, and then did you start? How did you start?
So it was kind of a mix of everything, right? So I didn't go to art school. I did a BA in philosophy and political science with economics and advertising. And I chose my subjects for the art. But in order to teach myself art, I had to study what the schools were doing, what artists were learning, and build a curriculum of my own. So curriculum design was something that inadvertently I taught myself how to do and created that. And then I spent essentially 8 hours a day for a year teaching myself art by reading, writing, going and seeing artworks in museums and galleries, reading books in libraries, going watching artists work, going to live events. And then, of course, my mentor, Brinda, really took me under the wing and showed me her process and explained to me a lot of things. And I got through her to interact with a lot of people and learn their processes. So that's kind of where it started off from.
Okay, that's great. And how was the transition from art to design?
I don't think there was really ever a transition. They both went hand in hand. Like I said, art doesn't pay very well, so you always have to do something else to kind of keep yourself afloat unless you're picked up by a gallery or you make a big sales or anything. So for me, it never was separated. It was always happening side by side because even as an artist, you have to design your own brochures, you have to design your own pieces, you have to design the artworks themselves, the exhibitions that you put up. You have to do the marketing for yourself. You have to create your own social media dynamics. There's all of that. So it's never really separate. It's always kind of hand in hand as you go along. And you have to be able to come up with a strategic plan of how you're going to survive for many years at a time to be able to produce something that's cohesive and a kind of legacy, if you will, over the period.
Right. Sir, it would be great if you can share your timeline. Like you started with an being an artist, you started
Sure.
working with Brinda ma'am, and then how did you proceed?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, so she had a major impact on me. And so my journey starts in 2006 when I start teaching myself art. 2007, after a year, I feel comfortable enough to begin a journey as an artist full time. And then at the end of that year is when I got in touch with Brinda and joined her for the Kalagoda Arts Festival. And so I was kind of interning under her, and that turned into a job by the end of it. And then 2009, I again worked with her in the same capacity, but this time I was also doing installations at the festival under her guidance. 2010 onwards, 2010, I joined an art gallery for a little while. 2011, from 2011 onwards, it was kind of a bit of a roller coaster journey. So I was doing murals and I was also working side by side on my own paintings and pieces. And then 2013 to 2015, I was working with a space called Presta Creativity Center where we were teaching kids art. It was an art space for kids. Post that, I joined the Cheesecake Project, which is run by Stuti Sakakar Dasgupta, and she's a phenomenal photographer. So I did wedding photography and stuff under her. And then 2015, sorry, I moved over to working with a friend of mine on her company at the time, Quaver Communications. And so we did social media design over there. We did social media content development. Some very interesting companies that we were doing material for, like Common Garden, and there was a couple of companies in Canada as well, Alaska and Canada. Some really wide out there topics that I had to study and learn about on the spot because in India we don't have elk and moose, so we never have any need to design anti-elk and anti-moose systems for orchard protection. So that was something cool to learn about. But we had a whole bunch of really fun clients that we did some work with, everything in from branding to product photography and in between. And then I joined ISDI as a visiting faculty, and then that turned into a full-time job. And then since then, I've been at ISDI for 7 years now. And yeah, it's been a wonderful journey being a design faculty and working with students and student experience and helping them find their way and navigate through the design world.
So, how was your experience with students 7 years down the line that came to SD versus today? Has there any change in the mindset of students, or how is it?
Oh, the mindset is completely different. The generation is completely different. So it's night and day. I mean, there was a whole Gen Z sect. There is a massive difference in students that we had back in 2016, 2017 coming in and what we have today. It's a huge generational shift. We had the beginning of Gen Z coming in at this stage now. We're starting to see the tapering off of Gen Z that's bleeding into Gen Alpha. So there's a whole mindset shift. There's a whole different dynamic at play. There's a whole different way of looking at the world that's coming in. So it's up to us to also adapt and change according to that and be able to filter what we need to and produce curriculums and interactions that really also match up to what they need as a generation.
Okay. So, what is strategic design management and why is it exploding in popularity for businesses today?
So SDM is a very interesting space, right? Strategic design and management. Most people forget the and part of it that comes in between design and management. Um, it's okay. Imagine it this way: you've got a triangle, right? You have the customer, you have the client, and you have the strategic designer. It's the strategic designer's job to find out what the customer needs, what the client wants, and then how to bridge that gap by looking at what the client can deliver, what their monies are like, what their organization is like, the number of people involved, the sourcing of materials, and things like that. So the strategic design and management person or designer will come in and they will study the books of the client. They will look at everything that goes into the manufacturing process, whether it's a service or it's a product or a brand or whatever the problem is that needs to be solved. They identify the problem first, and then they look at what the customer needs and what the customer wants, defines the persona and says, okay, here's a persona that, or a set of personas that we can design and solve for that will cover the largest possible quantity of people if it's required on that scale, or if we need to satisfy a very specific, particular small group of individuals with a very fundamentally specific product or service that is not catering to them so far. So it allows for the company to maximize their profits by minimizing their expenses and managing their people correctly. So strategic design looks at every aspect of design. So if you want to be a strategic design management person, then you have to be willing to really put in the hard work to get to know as much about the world as you can, to fill your head with knowledge, and then find the wisdom to make something work within. That's essentially what it is.
And how can companies leverage strategic design management to gain a competitive edge?
It's a very simple process. You have to be open-minded. You have to be very honest with the person that you're dealing with. The SDMer wants to help you create the best possible scenario for you. So it's best to just sit down and say, let's talk about it. Let's look at everything. Let's not hide anything under the rug and be very open about it. Because the more you can do that, the easier and quicker it is to actually increase those profits and make things much more efficient within the company. So a company can use an SDMer to leverage a competitive edge by just realigning itself in the way that it needs to, not just generally. What a lot of companies do in general is they'll say, oh, we're not making a profit. We don't have the money. Let's fire everyone. Right? Mass layoffs. Worst thing you can do actually. The smarter thing to do is to say, who do we have on board? What are their skill sets and what are their talents? Now let's look at what the customer wants and customer needs and try to find the gap between it and say, how do we reshuffle who we have? Retask people in different ways to generate a better outcome. So that's where the SDMer comes in and creates that leverage for the company.
Okay, sir, can you give an example? That example can be hypothetical as well, like company A and company B. How
Sure.
company A without an SDM will perform, and with an SDM, what's the difference?
Sure. So let's take a look at a company. Let's say we take Kia Motors, right? They're a multinational company. They're a massive organization. They produce vehicles in different places. Now, the production process remains fairly similar because you set up a plant and you have your raw materials come in and you do everything. But clearly, some plants are producing more and some plants are producing less. And it's not like those plants are necessarily servicing local needs only. They're also exporting and shipping to other places, which means somebody is not paid attention to how much output is required from a particular plant. And we just set it up because it is a good investment to set it up there. So an SDMer would come in and say, okay, you know what, you're wasting your money by producing so many vehicles in, let's say, in India, where the market's not that big for your vehicle, the purchasing is not that big, versus actually setting up a plant in the US, right? There's a major demand for jobs in the US. There's a major job requirement for automated services in the US. People are buying cars constantly. The size of the US, people don't really understand how far everything is and how wide it's designed to be. So you do need vehicles there. And people are looking at newer vehicles, they're looking at better quality vehicles. So the SDM would study the markets and say, okay, if India is not giving you that much of a return, let's reduce the quantity of cars we're pumping out from India, and let's instead turn India into a research and development facility. And let's start producing the cars in the US instead of producing it in India and then shipping it across the US and spending more money. So it's about being smart and putting that in. So that's one way that one could do it. Now, the other way is you have a really successful company. And I mean, Nestle has done this, right, with Maggie. They looked at Maggie and they said, okay, it's doing really, really well in India. And then suddenly there's a luck, right? Where suddenly people are talking about MSG and they're talking about all these other chemicals and things that are in the food and how it's not safe. And we all know how social media rumors get started and spread like wildfire. And suddenly people are all talking about Maggie and how unhealthy it is and how everything's bad. So an entire, you know, investigation is launched and everything goes crazy. In the meantime, Nestle is doing the smart thing and they're saying, okay, if this is the response people are having, let's pull our product for a little while. Let's rethink what we're doing and let's actually do an investigation of our need. They do that using the help of an SDMer and actually understand if we want to gain the public's trust again, we need a different kind of marketing campaign. Now, marketing people know what they're doing most of the time. They do a really good job, but it's not always cost efficient. So the SDMer starts saying, you know what, you don't have to necessarily spend a ton of money to produce very high quality videos and things like that. Let the people themselves ask for the product back, right? Everyone who's used to eating it and isn't getting to eat it anymore, let them tell us their stories, right? Hence, Maka Haat Ka Khana and all of those kinds of things
Yeah.
are tapped into. And suddenly Nestle is back on board. You have Maggie sitting right back on the shelves. It's doing better than ever. And there's no issues with it, right? So this is where an SDMer coming and spots the correct problem to solve and then develops a solution and then deals with the design team, with the marketing team, with all the other teams and tells them specifically what they need to be doing, rather than everyone just sitting there twiddling their thumbs and then trying to figure it out on their own. If everyone's connected via one person or one team, now you have a much higher chance of success compared to everyone just doing it on their own as is.
Okay. So, what are some specific roles within SDM that might be a good fit for a design student?
So as an SDMer, you can actually fill into a lot of different roles: brand strategist, design strategist. You can talk about product strategy, you can talk about product management, you can talk about design management. You could be a consultant where you are actually working with entrepreneurs to help them grow their company in an efficient manner. You could also be looking at other developmental positions, right, where you are actually experimenting with a lot of strategy and design, and you get to do something really out there. You can also go into events. You can also go into food. The beauty of SDM is there is nothing that is off limits.
Right.
Every industry is open to you. Every space is open to you. So if you like airplanes like I do, then aerodynamics and aerospace engineering, all of them also need somebody to kind of guide them and direct them towards what should be built at the right time. Because any creative thinker, any engineer, any designer is going to want to keep producing something new. But do they need to produce that particular thing right now, or can they take an older design and rework it for now before we get to the innovation jump? So it's a matter of really you as an SDM are thinking, what will I enjoy doing? And then finding a role to sit in over there. Now, the fun part about it also is that through SDM, you learn how to be an entrepreneur yourself, which means you can set up your own consultancy, your own business, and actually run that. And it could be a business that helps businesses. So either way, you're still doing a great service to everyone across the platform.
Okay. So, what are the key challenges that companies face while implementing SDM?
The major challenge that everyone faces is old school thinking, right? The more senior individuals will generally be less likely to experiment. They feel a little more comfortable with what they've been doing. They have their own strategies that have worked for a long time, but sometimes you're so out of touch that you don't actually realize that it's not working anymore or what can you do differently. So taking that leap is usually where it's very, very difficult. Convincing people to jump into a new design strategy or a thought strategy, to change the management style, to approach things with a whole new viewpoint. That's one of the main things. Another key challenge is the ego question, right? When you bring a design strategist or an SDMer into the game, suddenly your traditional manager and your traditional corporate employee doesn't like that someone's looking into what they're doing because they like to have control over their own bubble. So there's a lot of pushback from that side of things. That is, however, only happening in very specific situations where it's already a close-minded space and it's a close-minded team. But for the most part, what we found is these key challenges are still just minor roadblocks along the way. They're not something major because once you take a small project and you turn it around and you show that as a proof of concept, and then you do it with another one that's slightly bigger and slightly bigger, you start realizing, oh, we can scale this. We can do this on a large scale and it makes a lot of sense. So STMers are storytellers. That's one of the things that we teach them to be, and we train them to be is good storytellers. And what they do is realize that the hard sell is not going to work anymore. So instead, what we do is we tell a story and we show the people through that storytelling that, have faith. Let us take a small little thing and let's do it as an experiment. There's going to be nothing to lose here. At the most, we shut down that company or that department or that section and redirect our funds elsewhere, or we start profiting. And if we start profiting, then we can show that as proof that this works. And we try it again and we try it again. Because that's the whole game. It is to keep trying something different by using a fixed process that allows you to determine what needs to be changed, not just experimenting without a cause. Right? That's the goal. So it's to say, we can change people's minds if we tell stories, if we do things step by step. We're just a bit organized. And then those key challenges also start disappearing along the way.
So, what is the role of design thinking in SDM?
It's a good question. Now, design thinking is one of the many strategies that we employ as a process in SDM. You have double diamonds, you've got design thinking, there's a whole host of ways of approaching it. Some people use role play, some people use game design, some people use gamification. Some, if you go as far back as the 80s and 90s, you look at IDEO and the way that they work was by creating a very organized chaos space, right? So there's many different ways of doing it. Now, what design thinking does is allows a person at an entry level to just come in and just change their own perspective on things, to make sure that you're looking at everything from across the board and to make sure that empathy comes into play so that you're doing things in a very clear way, so that you're not really, pushing the wrong buttons and you're not letting your biases get in the way, but you're saying, let me look at everything from a clear perspective and make sure I'm covering all points of view. I'm also taking into account the most impossible sounding ideas and working with them, even if they sound impractical, it may actually turn out to be the right thing for us. So, judging things based on fundamental requirements, based on parameters, based on not just an assumption, but actually using an assumption as a way of starting a thought process, but then validating it, vilifying it, and saying, is it good, is it bad? And then accordingly taking it forward.
Okay, a little offbeat question. Design thinking and innovation has been implemented according to the new education policy in all the disciplines of schools as well as colleges. So, what do you think? How much impact will it create in education?
It's a massive impact changer. We've been pushing to have design thinking be a part of all courses for a long time, and it's something I wish I learned in school. I'll be very honest. We didn't even learn it in college when, as part of philosophy, that's something that should have been taught to us. But you know, regret is regret, and there's no point in having it. So we'd rather just look to the future and say, what can we change? How can we do things differently? By empowering educators with design thinking, you're allowing them to now empathize with the students in a different manner and design curriculums and bring different types of expertise to the table so that it changes the nature of the output of the student. It's not necessary that everyone has to sit and do a Prezi now, and write everything down in 60 words or less or whatever. But it's actually more imperative that we improve the type of storytelling that we're doing, the way that we're functioning. So the NEP will definitely benefit from design thinking being in education, but education itself will benefit from having design thinking in place. It will help principals figure things out a lot faster. It will help teachers figure things out faster. It will help just students figure things out faster. Even decisions like, what do I want to be when I grow up? If we show them in a practical sense, age appropriately, of course, how to use design thinking as a process, it'll change the game.
Okay, and do you think if design thinking is implemented in marketing side of the courses and also SDM has design thinking to an extent in the beginner level, will it create more of competition for SDM students?
Not at all, not at all. See, SDM is its own thing. It's its own space. And in SDM, we don't just use design thinking at a base level. We actually develop it into a multi-step process that's quite extensive. And we use it in different ways. We alter it in different ways. So it's function specific, if you will. But when it comes to marketing and stuff like that, it should be there because we live in a world where time is money, according to most people. So why not use it?
Right.
The SDM will bring something really, really unique to the table. If anyone's got to be worried, it's the MBA, right? Because that's where the overlap actually occurs. The MBA person now really needs to up their game to understand what their role is about and what their specific output needs to be. Because now we also have a design MBA that is being launched, and it's a wonderful program because it's bringing the best of SDM and the best of MBA together to create a very, very modern, functional, relevant kind of course so that a person can upskill really quickly and be very relevant and not lose jobs and not lose opportunities, but more importantly, can innovate on the job to produce a better outcome for everyone. At the end of the day, we're all servicing customers, we're all servicing people. Even through this podcast, we're actually helping people understand what's going on. So even the conversation that we have designed today and that we are having, my responses coming out, it's all towards helping someone else. And that's what design really is.
Right.
So if we want that competition, yes, we absolutely do. Because we want to now specialize roles a little bit more because everyone's getting very, very specialized. But we also want to create some kind of generalizations that help everyone speak the same language, at least. So that way the communication is clearer, even though the roles are separate.
Right. Okay. Sir, what do you feel? What are the skill set a student needs to get into STM? Is sketching a core thing that a student needs?
So sketching is definitely a skill that everyone should have. And we say, yes, it is a core skill that you should definitely have. You don't have to be amazing at it, but you should be able to communicate well with it. It should be drawing as a design tool and communication tool rather than being able to create a Mona Lisa and a Van Gogh masterpiece or something. But it's definitely one of those things. But the biggest thing that you need for being in STM is curiosity and a drive to solve problems. So if you can build your observation skills, if you can build your creative expression skills, your logical thinking. These are the things that will really help you when it comes to strategic design management. Now, being very aware of social media, being very aware of softwares, knowing your Photoshops and Illustrators and InDesigns and 3D modeling softwares and video editing, all of these things really comes into play. There is a UI UX component that is there in SDM, so you should want to at least understand how to code and program even if you're not great at it, to be able to at least create the most basic of prototypes. There are plenty of AI tools. So understanding AI and playing with AI tools is also a great skill to build along the way. So you don't have to be amazing at all of these things right now. If you're getting into the space of SDM, you should at least give yourself, if you're not studying SDM, you should at least give yourself a year's time to train in all of these things and build your skills up. But if you are studying SDM, well done, good choice. And these are things to keep refreshing as you go along and build up as you go along, because the stronger these skills are, the better the outcome that happens with SDM.
Okay. So SDM being a new career option, there's a lot of resistance from parents as well. So anything you would like to add on to this that can help students convince parents or give parents a perspective how their
100%.
future will be more promising, because parents are more concerned about a promising future.
Absolutely. So here I'll speak directly to the parents. Parents, your kids know what they're doing. Trust them. STM is a brilliant space to be in purely because you can dive into any industry at any point in time. So you're never out of a job opportunity. There is always something new to do. You can always have fun by trying something new. You can always dive into a whole new space and take on new challenges. So for your students, for your kids, let them explore. STM is a great space to be in, especially if they have a business mindset, especially if they want to solve problems, because you forcing them to do something else is not going to keep them happy, and it's not going to keep them encouraged. And it's not going to make them want to actually, build up a legacy and build up a career. It's going to make them want to say, you know what, we'll do this to please everyone, whatever the degree is, and then all kuch karenge at some point, which is not the right way to approach it. The best way to do something for your students, for your kids, is to guide them in a direction that tells them you can do something that will allow you to do everything. That's the beauty of it. So SEM is one of those things where you can really, really have a good time playing and studying all at once and doing something really fun with it. So definitely it's a good opening space to kind of tackle. And the fun of it also is that if you do an undergrad in STM, you can do a postgrad in something more specific if that's an area, that's a part of design that you really want to dive into. So let's assume that you're really interested in doing stuff in product design. Fantastic. You can do an undergrad in STM and then you can do a postgrad in product design. You could even do an undergrad in product design and do a postgrad in STM. That's also an opportunity. STM can be learned in many different ways and at different stages. So it's always there to open your career up into something interesting. The sooner you get into it, the better equipped you are to actually expand your knowledge base even further and allow yourself to experiment a lot.
Correct. Okay. For example, a student is confused between multiple career options in design, and SDM is one of them. So, are there any checklists that a student can self-evaluate, I am a right fit or not? Or you
Absolutely.
recommend the student to get inside in the first year and then decide?
So it depends on where you're studying. Now, at ISDI, for example, we have a very fun policy where the first year you get to actually dip your fingers into all the different design disciplines and see what works best for you. And we also do essentially a skill mapping to see where your skills are at, what are the skills of the jobs you would like to take on, and what's the gap. And then see, okay, now what's my interest? What am I good at versus what do I like doing? And see where the overlap is, and accordingly make a decision for it. If your school or your college that you're looking at does not offer this as an opportunity, you can still do this on your own. Do a basic skill mapping, write everything down, see, make the connections, and just find out the answer to three questions. Number one, what am I good at? Number two, what do I like to do? And number three, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to work for someone? Do I want to work for myself? Or do I want to perhaps do a little bit of both? Right. So there's always options to find under these umbrellas. So if you can do the skill mapping like this and just open it up, then it's an easy way to understand what's good for you. The beauty of SDM, like I said, is that you're never limited to a particular space. You can really dive into pretty much anything. So if you're really, really unsure, talk to your professors, talk to your teachers, talk to people in the industry. But more importantly, just ask yourself, what am I going to have fun studying and what am I going to have fun doing? If you're not going to enjoy your job, it's never going to take you anywhere. 17 years later, as an artist, I can tell you I'm having a lot of fun. 15 years of teaching, I can tell you I'm having a lot of fun. Having done photography and continuing to do it, it's fun. I love doing it. I have so many things with me. I mean, you can't see it right now because my background is blurred, but if I unblur it, you'll just see artwork everywhere. These are pieces I've collected from other artists. So I'm able to build my own art collection as well. Right. So if you enjoy what you're doing, it'll go on, and you'll always have an opportunity to really play around and experiment and innovate within that space for the others that are coming up as well.
Okay. So, can you specify any skill sets that a particular student possess will have an upper hand while joining SDM?
Not really. I mean, it's really open-ended. And like I said, if you have that curiosity and you have those observational skills, it takes you up a notch. The beauty of the way that SDM is taught is that you don't necessarily need to have those skills already there. We hone those skills with you along the way, and we grow
Right.
you into a person who has those skills. So if your interest is there and your desire to do some good is there, that's what's more important.
Okay, perfect. So, what are some specific companies that recruit SDM in India that can help
Um,
parents and students to visualize what my future will be or where can I work, possibly work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the big four are always there. Your Deloittes and TCS and all these companies in the world. But a lot of younger businesses, entrepreneurs, they all want to work with an SDMer. So there's no real, only these people are hiring kind of a conversation. It's more about who needs someone. And the best way to look at it is everyone needs it.
Yeah,
So you can
agreed.
always find a
But
spot everywhere.
the
So
level of awareness in the industry for an
exactly
SDM.
what I'm saying. Exactly why I'm saying that. It's to a point now. We would have had this conversation 10 years ago, and we wouldn't have been able to name a single company. I can guarantee you that. But today, I don't have to name a company because every company needs an SDM.
True.
So there is a job out there no matter what. With our own students, yes, they all want to apply to the big names like an Infosys and a Deloitte and a TCS and a Godrej and all these places. But it's the smaller companies, the smaller studios that are starting out. They're only 5 years into their journey. They really want to upscale now. That's where the SDM roles are really coming in. It's the airlines, right? Everyone's struggling, everyone's fighting. Fuel costs are through the roof. Everyone's having a bad time flying. Flights are delayed. Ryanair is charging for breathing the air sometimes on the airplane that you're getting onto it. I'm joking, of course, they don't do that, but that's what the stories are. Like they're charging for everything, and the customer's not happy. So
Right.
all of the airlines want somebody to come in and be like, okay, what can we change? What can we do that doesn't impact the customer as much, but still makes everything work a little bit better? The art world needs SDMers, automobile industry needs SDMers, design itself needs SDMers. Because think about it, us as designers, we're creative people. We're not business people. We're not always good at business. So we do need somebody to think for us and manage the business side of things. Well, we do all the creative management and creative output. It's absolutely wonderful to see that any and every space, every industry, the food and beverage industry, the travel and tourism industry, the medical industry, the law industry, every single space needs an STMer today. So it's not that you need to have the most technical of skills or anything and be like the most amazing programmer and developer and all those things, because there are specialists who do that, but they need somebody to help them figure out what they need to produce. I can tell you from my friends' experiences that, as programmers, they've been told to sit and create programs and code, write like millions of lines of code for something that is really redundant and pointless, just because somebody with an old school mindset didn't understand a good process change that was required. Right. It was a waste of everyone's time. It was a waste of resources. It didn't make any sense. But in today's world, when you have the younger individuals coming in and have the STMers coming in, they're able to figure out specifically what the developers and programmers and coders need to be doing with their time so that they're not sitting at odd hours every day and they actually have a life. There's a good work-life balance that people can get back to. They can do interesting things. They can build skills. They can actually enjoy the whole process of innovating as well. So for anyone out there who's wondering, what are my options? Where am I going? What's possible? The world is at your fingertips. Every single industry, every single space needs you as an SDMer. Get your degree, dive into it, do the work.
And even in career opportunities for an SDMer can work, can do some job at lower, higher level.
100%.
They can also be an entrepreneur. If someone is coming from a business
100%.
family, they can add on to their businesses as well, irrespective of
Absolutely.
their streams. So,
That's what a lot of our students do. In fact, they
right,
come and say, dad has a business, mom has a business, and we want to grow this family business. And they come into SCM for that reason. They want to get all those entrepreneurial skills, as well as all these design thinking, strategy, and management skills to be able to then look at that business and be like, okay, how do we keep our traditions alive, but how do we modernize and how do we upscale without spending too much? And how do we maximize our profits at the same time? So
right.
it's definitely a great place to be, especially if you have an entrepreneurial background, if you have a family business background. It's for everyone. It's honestly for everyone. And again, the projects you do in your STM studies, if you say, let's say that you want to go down the road of fashion, right? Fantastic. You can do a bunch of your projects in fashion specifically. So you hone your skills towards fashion. You'll still learn all the general things you need to learn, but you can also then start specifying some of your skills along the way. There will not be a single professor who will not help a student find their passion and find what they want to learn. We all love our jobs and we love our students when they want to do something. So if you bring in that energy, we're all there for you and we're 100% behind you to be able to do.
Okay. So, in your experience, what are some of the biggest misconception a design student have towards SDM?
This is a good one. So one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is, SDM, hey, it'll be easy. Or SDM, hey, I don't need to worry about drawing. right? These are the two biggest misconceptions people have. They assume that it's not that much work because in a product design, you have to work in the lab and you have to make things with wood and metal and glass and all these things. Or in fashion, you're sitting there and working on your designs and then you're sewing the designs and you're understanding stitching, working with the carriers, doing all that. So everyone has these assumptions that all the other design spaces are really hard work, but that SDM, you're just sitting in front of a laptop and go kya kaam. That's not true at all. You're on the ground doing research, you're talking to people, you're doing your primary and secondary, you're doing pretty much everything to get insights out of all of that research. Then you're sitting and ideating, then you're sitting and prototyping, you're building things, you're making things, you have to understand the industry, you have to talk to teammates, you have to talk to seniors, you have to talk to clients and customers. And you sometimes you have to tell the customer that they're wrong or the client that they're wrong without upsetting them. So there's so much more to SDM that people don't realize. And drawing is a big part of it because if you can't do a sketch prototype, if you can't do a storyboard, you can't explain anything to anyone. So they don't know what to make, they don't know what to build. So it really comes down to you being really, really 100% on the ball and saying, oh, this is not easy. Right. So these are some of the main misconceptions that people have. Another one that usually people have is that salary is going to be low. This is not true in the slightest. Okay. We've seen during our placements some salary offerings coming in for SDMers starting at 7, 8 lakhs, which is absolutely amazing in today's world where we know jobs are really scarce and it's difficult to get into the market. But that offer is still coming through. And it's amazing because that shows how important this is, even at a beginning level. And the growth trajectory within it is so steep that people don't mind starting at that 7 or 8 lakhs because they know that within 3 or 4 years, they're going to be doubling that and then doubling that again as they go forward and as they rise through the ranks. So it's entirely in your hands to build that flow and build that growth if you're good at your own networking and good at understanding your job.
So if a particular student is mastering in any of the design discipline, doing a master's in SDM will be a good choice or a good add-on for their upskilling.
Definitely. But let's be clear, for somebody to do an STM as a master's, it means they have an entrepreneurial spirit, which means they want to set up their own business more than likely. I'm not saying it's 100%, but more than likely, which is why they want to do it because they want to be able to take their skills in product design or fashion design or communication or interiors or whatever it might be. And they want to do something with it by not working for someone else. Right. They want to set up their own studio, their own firm, whatever, or a consultancy, but they want to be able to do it as an entrepreneur, as a business person themselves. So that's a great way of looking at it. Now, if you're doing a postgrad SDM course and you're not aiming to work for yourself, you're aiming to join someone else, then that's the kind of person that is looking to innovate, but understand how to innovate within business constraints so that it becomes more effective. And that's also a fantastic opportunity. So one should just be really clear of why one is doing that postgrad in SEM so that they can approach it with a clear mind and not be confused about what the outcome is good. So if they know what they want to do, that's a great way to do it.
And beyond design skills, what are the other soft skills that are most important in the success of SDM for design students?
Communication skills. You should know how to talk to people. You should practice interacting with people, your dress sense, your presentation, how to tell good stories, empathy. These are all amazing soft skills that one should have. But most important is cultural skills. You should be well versed in terms of global cultures, religion, society, history, anthropology, all of these things that help you understand how to deal with people. So, like if you go to Japan, there is an etiquette that must be followed. There's a way of doing things, and you can't just do it the typical brash Indian way. It doesn't work. And I mean, that's an example that I'm giving to a lot of experience where we've had Japanese guests come down to ISDI and because we knew how to interact with them and we knew what kind of temper to keep with everyone, it was a fantastic interaction. And the following year, when we had Korean guests come, we could alter that and change that to meet their levels of energy and their kind of approach of doing things. And we had a great time. And more recently, last year, we had some 26 faculty from universities across Britain come down and teach. And everyone got along, everyone was able to interact. And in fact, the professor who came down to work with the group that I was handling, he was teaching cultural studies. And he also said it's a really important thing as Indians, it's really easy for us because we are a melting pot of cultures, but that's a great skill to manage. But you take judgment and throw it out of the window. Instead, you look at it with logical eyes and you're like, okay, what do we need to do to make sure this person has a great time? But also, how do we stand our ground when it comes to negotiations? Right? We don't want people yelling and screaming at each other. We want people to be able to talk to each other. When it comes to, practical skills like interviews, whether it's to apply to a job or as research, right? Both of them have different approaches. So being well versed in those kinds of communication skills becomes really important.
Okay. In terms of resources, what are some resources like books or courses or workshops that can help a design student learn more about SDM?
Um, Honestly, I would say everything. Go take a pottery class, go do heritage work, sit down and talk to a business owner. Anything that you can study, anything you can learn helps you with STM. That's the way it works. The more knowledgeable you are, the more you can fill your brain with different interactions and practical stories from people. That's the best way to do it. In terms of books, one of my favorite books is not directly linked to STM per se, but it certainly upholds all the tenets and the visual, not visual, but the vision of what STM is Adam Savage's Every Tool's a Hammer. It is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. I will scream about it from rooftops until the day I die. Adam Savage is one of those guys who's a real inspiration. For anyone who doesn't know who Adam Savage is, he was one of the Mythbusters on Discovery Channel when I was growing up. And he's a special effects creator. He is an inventor. He is a tinkerer, but he's also a really smart guy. And he loves to teach people about things. He has a wonderful YouTube channel called Tested. And I encourage everyone to go and check that out because you'll never get bored and you'll learn so much. But his book, he decided to write it in a way that collects his learnings from life, from all the different people who have influenced him in the different ways and different functionalities of life and how you can do things with them. So it's a great, great book to pick up and study. It'll definitely show you a lot in terms of how to solve problems, how to approach problems, how to approach people, how to have disagreements and not hate the person. Simple things like that. So it's definitely one of those things that I would suggest.
Okay.
Another one that I would also suggest, again, offbeat suggestion over here is Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This is more of a philosophical book. Um, Thus Spoke Zarathustra is a neat book by Nietzsche, the philosopher and political thinker, but it's a very important book to have in your arsenal because it makes you think about ego. It makes you think about the super ego and makes you think that, okay, when I'm in a situation where I could be lording over others or I could be arguing with others and making them feel small, should I? Because that's one of the biggest questions we have in design is just because I can, should I? And that's the most important thing to take up.
So, according to you, is a formal education in SDM very necessary, or a student can learn these skills on job?
So a student will learn these skills on the job, but I would suggest that if you are going to be a professional problem solver, then doing it through formal education is definitely a better way of doing it. I had to learn all of this stuff on the go and on the job, and there's still many things I still need to learn. There's many things I need to pick up. There's a lot of terminology and a lot of processes that I don't know of purely because I never studied it. So I'm studying them now as I'm going along. But if I had studied it, if it was a course that was available to me at the time, it would have been phenomenal. So I would definitely suggest that if you want to be a professional problem solver, and you want to work in design and management and help people and do all these things simultaneously, STM is definitely something to study. Personally, I would say as an undergrad course, purely because it gives you the widest learnings possible over the largest amount of time. So 3 years of STM with a year of foundation studies in design, there's not a skill in there that will not help you in life. So take it all, learn it all, do it all.
Okay. So we've come across a lot of students who have, aspirations to join SDM, but because of financial restrictions, they are unable to, pursue the degree or masters in SDM. So any suggestions for those kind of students? How they can, be more competitive or they can upskill themselves?
Do exactly what I did. Talk to people, right? Go for networking events, go for mixers, and talk to people. Really get into their minds and understand their processes. You'll find a lot of people on YouTube, you'll find a lot of people on Instagram who will preach to you about, I became a billionaire in so many days and I did this in a year, I did that. Congratulations to them, good for them, doesn't work for everyone. But if you want to help other people, talk to people. Talk to people who have helped people, entrepreneurs, people with failed businesses. Find out why the business failed, right? The successes that we see are this much. Life is this much. So it's important to find out the entire spectrum that exists and not just that tiny little bit at the top, right? For every amazing painting I've created, there's like 30, 40 terrible paintings I've created along the way, right? For every student I've been able to help to a grand success, there are some people I've not been able to help for whatever reason. I mean, maybe multiple reasons where we didn't connect, we didn't interact well, maybe I didn't understand their context or they didn't understand mine. There could be any number of reasons, but I aim to try and help as many different people in as many different ways that are customized to them. Sometimes you can't. And it's important to know what to do in those situations as well. So for anyone who can't find a way to study SDM formally, that's absolutely fine. It's not the end of the world. Just play. Go to places, talk to people, play around, see what happens. Visit museums, study history, see what people have done in the past, and actually do your own case studies. That's the best way to do it. If you can do your case studies and then get in the mindset of what works and what doesn't, fantastic. Watch Shark Tank or shows like it, Dragon's Den, and things like that. really listen to what people are doing when they're pitching something and when they're getting the feedback from the sharks or the dragons. Because there is a logical reasoning, there's a way of thinking, there's a reason why they want to invest $50,000 into something, or put 25 lakhs into something, or whatever it might be. There must be a reason for it, right? Talk to the small business owner, talk to the chai wala on the street. How is he managing to live a life and earn money and do everything, right? And he's not working the entire day. He's working maybe only 4 to 6 hours a day. And then he's just chilling and living life. There must be something to it. So depending on what you have available to you, talk to people. Skills, techniques, they all come into play. You can learn them from books, you can learn them from YouTube, you can learn them from a course on Coursera or a Udemy or anything like that. But the most important thing that it teach you is talking to.
Amazing piece of advice. Anything else that you would like to add as a concluding piece of advice for students?
My
Anything of it with
constant piece of advice, yeah, my constant piece of advice to all students, regardless of whether you're going to STM or not, is have fun. Just enjoy yourselves, right? The world is full of stress, the world is full of strife, everything's going sideways at the moment. Just have fun. The journey is more important, because when you're on a journey, there's no destination in sight. You're willing to stop and experience things along the way. If you're on a trip, then you have a fixed outcome and a fixed journey and a fixed amount of time, and that doesn't always work. So instead of setting an expectation, set a goal, and then set another goal, and then set another goal. And when you can't achieve a particular goal, reset it. Understand where it didn't work and reset it, retry to achieve it, and then move on to the next thing. If you try to do too many things at once, it's not going to work. So don't set an expectation, don't put that stress on your head, set goals and achieve them one at a time.
Thank you so much for your precious time, sir. I hope that this will
My
be a
pleasure.
wonderful session and all the students will get benefited by this session. Even if
Definitely,
they're
definitely.
interested to get into SDM or not, but they got a very different perspective towards design and towards businesses.
Absolutely.
Sir, I think our students also will get curious about the collection that you were talking about. Is there a possibility that you can share it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There we go. So this is a wide range of things that I've collected from many different artists. Some of them my students, some from other spaces. But yeah, I mean, a lovely bunch of prints. You can see there's a bunch of paintings, collaborative works, exchanges, lots of different things that we do. So paintings, prints, photographs, all sorts.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, sir, for your precious time.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.